Um, Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Salman Rafe. I'm the program manager at the Mittal Institute. This is actually our first seminar of the spring semester, so it's great to be able to start off with all of you. It's also much nicer in here than it is out there, and it will be like that for the next month or so. So hope you see you in the next few weeks as the semester continues. This is actually a rare treat for us. I always like to say that it's a treat to have one of our visiting fellows give a talk. This is an extra rare treat in that this is the second talk from this fellow while we have her with us, and this is just a couple days before she returns to India. So it's actually an extra privilege to be able to have her with us again one more time for a grand finale for her visit. But just to speak broadly about our fellowship programs, our one of the goals in the Mittal Institute is to bridge the gap between us here in Cambridge and the region. And so one of the ways we try to do that is by bringing sort of top tier talent and scholars from the region to be with us for a month at a time. And the Bajaj Fellowship, which is one of our newest fellowships, is just one of those opportunities. It brings a scholar from India here for a half-year period. And we've been very fortunate to have Nilanjana with us for, again, just about a half year. So this is, again, a really great opportunity. I'll defer to our moderator and chair to give a more proper introduction to her. But again, it's just a really wonderful opportunity to have this kind of world-class talent joining us here, sharing their findings and knowledge with us before they return and continue their studies back home. But without much further ado, I will give a relatively brief introduction to our moderator and chair. I could give probably a 1-hour introduction just to him, but I'll try and keep it just to a paragraph. Professor Sugata Bose is the Gardiner Professor of Oceanic History and Affairs. His field of specialization is modern South Asian and Indian ocean history. He's obtained his PhD from the University of Cambridge and was a recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship in 1997. Among his many works, his books include His Majesty's Opponent, Subhash Chandra Bose and India's Struggle Against Empire, and 100 Horizons, the Indian Ocean in the Age of Global Empire, in which he crosses area studies and disciplinary frontiers as he bridges the domains of political economy and culture. His most recent book is titled Asia After Europe, Imagining a Continent in the Long 20th Century. He's also quite literally the Mittal Institute's neighbor on the 4th floor, so it's always a pleasure to see him, not just in the hallways, but also in one of our seminar rooms. So I'd like to just thank Professor Bose for joining us for today, and also to the Asia Center for co-sponsoring this event with us. Other than that, I'll turn it over to you.
Actually, let me just add before you say, he's not only our neighbor, but in fact, the original steward and founder of the Mittal, what is now the Mittal Institute, which was originally the South Asia Institute and then South Asia Without Borders. So,
thank you very much, Hitesh and Salman. I'm truly delighted to be able to chair this evening's seminar. It's a subject which is very close to my heart, the Bengal School of Art. And we have with us Nilanjana Mukherjee, who did her PhD at Jawaharlal Nehru University. She got her degree in 2011 and has taught English literature at Delhi University for the last 2 decades. Her work involves questions of space, place, landscape, and cartography in literary narratives and visual cultures. She's the author of the book Spatial Imaginings in the Age of Colonial Cartographic Reason, Maps, Landscapes, Travelogues in Britain and India, published by Routledge in 2020. And she has edited or co-edited the volume Mapping India, Transitions and Transformations, 18th, 19th Centuries. She has been here at the Mittal Institute for the last few months, working on her current project on the spatial imagination and reality of the desert in northwestern India. And I have had brief conversations with her. The desert is in some ways the mirror image of the sea or the ocean. But today she's going to be speaking on a somewhat different topic. Her maternal grandfather, Ardhendu Prasad Banerjee, was one of the pioneering artists of the Bengal School, and someone who studied with Abanindranath Tagore and Nandalal Bose. And I'm sure you'll hear more about his life from Nilanjana. But let me just say that, you know, I have been involved in bringing together a small but a very rare art exhibition in Calcutta this winter. It was titled Portraits, an exhibition of unseen classics. And we were able to display for the first time in public 3 portraits by Abanindranath Tagore done in the first decade of the 20th century. One, a self-portrait, a second, a portrait of his wife, Suhasini Devi, and a third, a portrait of his son as a child, eldest son, Alokendranath Tagore. And these were in the private collections of Sharanindranath Tagore, who's been, in fact, a visitor here at Harvard. And he lent us these wonderful paintings for a month to show at Netaji Bhavan. And there were literally thousands of people who came to see these works of art. We also had, from that particular collection, a pencil sketch of Rabindranath Tagore by Mukul De, who had traveled with Rabindranath to Japan and the United States in 1916. And this was a sketch done in 1917, the year after. And we also decided to display a portrait by Atul Bose, who I'm sure would have been known to Ardhendu Prasad Banerjee. He was the great portrait painter of the middle decades of the 20th century. His great painting of Subhash Chandra Bose. And then from our family collections, we were able to bring out a portrait of my mother by Atul Bose, one of my father by Chintamani Kaur, again, a very well-known artist and sculptor. This was done actually at a time when Chintamani Kaur was doing the portrait of Netaji for the Central Gallery of Parliament. And he was using my father as a substitute to sit for that portrait. But we also had a wonderful American painter, Frank C. Bensing, who did a portrait of my father in 1959. When I, as a child, was here with my parents, my father was a Rockefeller Fellow at the Harvard Medical School, and he worked for a year and a half at the Boston Children's Hospital. And Bensing used to be commissioned by the Boston elite in those days. And he had come to do a painting of the head of the pediatric radiology department, Ed Newhouser. And if you go to the Boston Children's Hospital, you will still see that lovely oil painting of Newhouser with his residents and students, my father being one of them. But he also did a portrait of my father, which was given to my mother as a farewell gift in a very large X-ray envelope. Finally, we also brought out a charcoal sketch by my father, who actually learned, from Harendranath Sengupta some of the skills in this field. Of his sketch of his uncle Subhash Chandra Bose in 1934. So I have a deep interest in art, which is why I was so thrilled when Nilanjana said she would want to present here. And my mother, very early in her life, in fact, was an art critic who wrote about art in the 1950s. The Bengal School of Art featured in her work, but also American modern art during the time that she spent here in 1958-59. But Ardhendu Prasad Banerjee is a somewhat forgotten figure. And what's more, he lived through a period of cataclysmic historical events in Bengal. The famine of 1943, the partition of 1947, and I anticipate that some of that historical context might in fact begin to figure in some of the discussion that we might have after Nilanjana has presented. But I'm truly looking forward to seeing the projections of some of Ardhendu Prasad's works of art from your family archives. So, Nilanjana.
Thank you, Professor Bose. I can think of nobody better to chair this session other than you. In fact, when I was doing this work, I came across your talk. I attended it in Delhi, and it gave me a fresh insight into the kind of work that I saw in the archives. A lot has been talked about, about the Bengal School of Art, but your insight into it as a very connected space, as a space to be freshly seen through the interactions and circulations that have happened over time. I mean, that is a much elided theme, I feel, and it can bring back this kind of art back into the discourse. I'm very thankful for thankful to the South Asia Institute for hosting my talk, and especially to Salman, because the moment I said that I want to give this talk, he left no stones unturned, and was ready to host this event. And similarly, thank you. This is a very personal moment also for me, because he being my grandfather, I've never met him, but I have heard a lot of stories since my childhood from my mother. My mother actually inspired me to read a little more, find out things about him. And she always wanted to, she kept nagging me, what's happening to this work? Are you doing it? And I would always say, I'm focusing on my other research work, and I'll do it when I have a little bit of window. She passed away in 2023 in November, and this was one of her last wishes, so to say, and I could not do anything about it before she passed away, but hopefully I want to take it forward from now on, and this is like the first launching event of this new project that I might carry on later in life. So I'm very thankful and grateful for this gathering as well. Ardhendu Prasad Banerjee, I'll go to his life first. Firstly, when we talk about Bengal School of Art, I'm not sure how many of you would already know about it, that there are three very distinct phases of Bengal School of Art. One carrying on from the company school of painting, and it's getting mixed with, the folk culture, folk elements being mixed with the print culture that comes in. And this is in the middle of 19th century. Later on with Abanindranath, there is a distinct movement, and there's a way forward to find what should be the national aesthetic of determining aesthetic of the nation. Largely, this was also a very loose term, because it was formed on the basis of the location where this movement was going on, Bengal School, as opposed to the one which was going on maybe in the Bombay presidency. The third phase, in which Ardhendu Prasad actually belongs, is the one which gained currency from the institution of Kalabhavana artists. That is 1920s onwards, and the beginning of Shanti Niketan. So Ardhendu Prasad was born on 7th of February 1902 in village Kotalipur in Faridpur district of undivided Bengal, in a well-to-do landed family. One side of his father's family line also lived in Calcutta's suburban Paikpara. He was born to Ramchandra Bandyopadhyay, a sub-judge, and Binodini Devi. These are his seals. I'll talk about them later.
Mhm.
So in 1918, at the age of 16 years, Ardhendu joined the Government Art College in colonial Calcutta, where Rabindranath Tagore had colossal influence in developing Indian style, even though at this point he was not a functionary. He was vice principal from 1905 to 15, and he was the first native vice principal. He left a lasting influence uh, both on the college and Ardhendu Prasad. A bit about Abanindranath and his making. He played a key role in the making of the national art movement, as did some other figures. For example, Ernest Binfield Havel, who was Abanindranath's teacher, Japanese artist Okakura, who wrote Ideal of the East, Tenshin, Ananda Kumar Swamy, Aurobindo Ghosh, Sister Nivedita. These were the key figures of this time who, actually, began this movement. Actually, this has taken a long time in the making. In 1897, Griffiths published his book containing copies of Ajanta paintings. Then in 1902 to 3, two important Japanese artists, Yokohama Taikan and Hishita, visited Calcutta. Anyways, in Abanindranath, one can identify influence of Mughal and medieval miniature, Pahari, and Japanese wash techniques. In its aesthetic philosophy, it allied with European Romanticism with its roots in the reaction to Industrial Revolution as a protest against mechanization. In the case of the given location, aesthetic philosophy went back to mythology and religion, which was thought at that time to enable spiritual upliftment and was generally thought to both contest and match Western techniques of conventions of high art. As a consequence, the idea of Oriental philosophy of art took a concrete shape. All of this, these are some of Abanindranath's paintings. I'm showing them because this has a profound influence on how Ardhendu Prasad's over developed over time. And of course, you would have seen this picture. All of this culminated, as it were, in the image of Bharat Mata as an emblem of national identity.
But of course, it was executed in the Japanese wash technique,
Yes.
which Abanindranath learned from Yokoyama Taikan.
So with this as its vision, the Government Art College flourished and trained students. And for the first time, we see aspiring professionals undergoing art training in studios. Thus, this is also the phase where we see the Bhadralok or native gentleman artist who want to make up, or take up art as a profession or a career. Two important students and disciples of Abanindranath were Nandalal Bose. This is how it looks now, the Government Art College. And I'm showing this because of the mural. You'll see similar kind of images in amongst the paintings of Ardhendu Prasad. Two important students and disciples of Abanindranath were Nandalal Bose and Ashit Kumar Haldar, who took this movement forward. In this picture, they are seen camped at the Ajanta caves. Banerjee trained under Ashit Kumar Haldar, who was taught there and was a disciple of Abanindranath. They frequented the Bichitra Shobha, a loose gathering of committed thinkers of art and culture formed in 1912, led by Rabindranath Tagore, which ultimately translated into the formation of the Indian Academy of Arts 8 years later and led to the foundation of Kala Bhavana in 1919. On the invitation of Rabindranath Tagore, when Ashit Kumar joined Vishwabharati Shantiniketan as art teacher, Ardhendu Prasad too shifted base and joined the same in 1919, remaining one of Ashit Kumar Haldar's most accomplished students. Sriniketan was also established in 1921 with the view of rural integration, all along this phase. The Kala Bhavana was the art department of Vishwabharati. So in this picture, you can actually see him peering into the book. He's in the middle, located in the middle. And the book is held by Ashit Kumar Haldar and Nandolal Bose. Nandolal Bose is also in the middle, and Ardhendu Prasad is right behind him. The Kala Bhavana was the art department of the Vishwabharati, conceived as an independent college dedicated to teaching and learning of fine art. Its building was erected with the generous endowment received from the Rajas in Western India, garnered by Rabindranath on his Kathiawar tour. He was one of the founding first generation students. Ardhendu was the first generation student of the institution. In fact, he was also he was there as a student even before the foundation of the Kala Bhavana. He was a part of the Brahmacharya ashram. The other painters here are Hirachand Dugar, Krishna Kinkar Ghosh, and Dhirendra Krishna Devgarg. Ardhendu trained in fine arts for almost 5 years, till 1924, under the supervision of both Ashit Kumar Haldar and Nandolal Bose. So Ardhendu Prasad's time in Shantiniketan as an art student also coincided with Vishwabharati's own financial distress. Vishwabharati was not even a registered entity, which was eventually granted to it in May 1922 vide Act 21 of 1860. In 1921, Ardhendu Prasad faced opposition from his family, who refused to sponsor his art training any further and deeply resented his connections with the freshly constituted Shantiniketan at Vishwabharati. His choice of taking up art as a career was also perceived as a meaningless pursuit in comparison to his other brothers who were getting placed in respectable government jobs in different sectors. There were pressures to get married and start a family of his own, which he could not entirely ward off. Incidentally, this was also the time when the university was also going through this financial crunch. No matter who taught Ardhendu Prasad his art, for him, Rabindranath was his Gurudev and eternal Guru, and motivating and helping him through his difficulties in life. So here in this letter that he writes to him from Chicago in February 1921, he talks about his Ardhendu Prasad's financial distress and helplessness, and tells him that don't worry, things will be better soon. So here, this is I'll just read out the Bengali version first.
I mean, it's exquisite handwriting.
So a part of this is এ কথা মনে রাখিও একদা আমাদের বিশ্বভারতী বিশ্ববাসী নানা জাতীয় ছাত্রের মিলন ক্ষেত্র হইবে, কিন্তু সেজন্য আমাদের সকলকে প্রস্তুত হইতে হইবে। এই মহা, there's a missing word which it's very crucial, but unfortunately don't have it, so I've just replaced it with আহ্বান, which is not the word here. মহা আহ্বানে যোগ দিবার আহ্বান যাহারা শ্রদ্ধার সহিত গ্রহণ করিবে তাহারা ধন্য হইবে. And he also consoles him, saying that when he returns back, he will look for financial aids and things will be better. And he should continue with his art training. And he's got the talent, and God would want him to pursue it further. So, well, he was very close to, and our family is full of all these anecdotes about, how his relationship with Gurudev. And this is one anecdote which has also become a, my grandmother is said to have cooked some porridge for Rabindranath. He was very pleased with that. And so he wrote a letter to her saying that, this was lovely, and gifted her this painting. So it's still there. It's one of the prized possessions of the family. So the first batch of Kalabhavan graduates by and large followed Abanindranath's aesthetic idiom based on revival of Ajanta style of mythology-themed paintings. Haldar himself spearheaded the travel to the Bagh caves in Madhya Pradesh to note and replicate the ancient murals found there. As their disciple, Ardhendu never really experimented with alternate idioms of styles during this time. His training in art continued under the special supervision of Ashit Kumar Haldar and Nandolal Bose. He accompanied Nandolal on many excursions and explored Buddhist pilgrimage sites in Bihar like Rajgir, Gaya, and Nalanda. Those excursions had a lasting impact on Ardhendu Prasad's over. The Buddha's characteristic downcast almond eyes in a trance-like state, his Gandhara Hellenistic facial features, sharp nose, arched eyebrows, were the dominant physical features that the human forms in Ardhendu Prasad's paintings went on to inherit. As a student, not only did he acquire skill and finesse, but also earned a lot of goodwill from all his teachers and acquaintances. A whole number of letters of recommendation from none less than Rabindranath, Abanindranath, Nandolal, C.F. Andrew, Shuniti Chatterjee testify to his being an exceptional student and a capable teacher. He was also remembered for his sophistication, sense of fashion, and idiosyncratic choices. In a memoir, his contemporary Binod Bihari Mukherjee, who joined the Kalabhavan a bit later and incidentally taught Satyajit Ray, remembers him as a fashionable young man with a pince-nez, the thread of which he changed daily. He is said to have matched the color of the thread with the days of the week, and Rabindranath himself made this an occasion to comment on his preferences. Stella Kramrisch, who visited Shantiniketan during this time, also mentions him in her writing. So the concerns that was at this time uppermost was of finding a job and to support the survival of these people. So these are some of the paintings which you can. And his first, so obviously not all students that Kalabhavan churned out could be absorbed within Shantiniketan. Ashit Haldar himself, after his return from a brief overseas sojourn, to his utter dismay, failed to be reinstated to his earlier position. On the one hand, this caused a lot of resentment and animosity, but on the other hand, it forced students to find placement outside Bengal. This spread and dissemination was in fact considered a triumph of the Bengal School. Ashit Haldar first went to supervise the Jaipur Art College and later was appointed the head of the Government Art College in Lucknow. After graduating from Kala Bhavan with distinction at the beginning of his professional career, he was appointed as a teacher of fine arts at the Theosophical Society Adyar in Madras. This position was secured possibly through connections that was established with James Henry Cousins, the Irish writer, teacher, and art aficionado active on behalf of the Theosophical Society and who became a great admirer and patron of the Indian Society of Oriental Art and the Bengal School. Cousins was one of the most vociferous supporters of the new style, which he applauded as being assertive and modern at the same time, and proved to be a bridge between the East and the South of India, and indeed to a Western audience outside India. Rabindranath Tagore also visited Adyar and stayed there in October to November 1935, as stated in a plaque there. However, after an ideological disagreement, even after landing with this prestigious offer, Ardhendu Prasad decided to leave that job at Adyar and return to Kolkata. However, here too is noticed an impact of Theosophy's philosophy in the color schemes and significance of colors specified in Annie Besant and Leadbeater's thought forms. Somehow this slide, I had prepared it, but it went missing. It's right before this, but it's not here. Yeah. So there's basically a scheme of colors in this in that book. And there are colors which are thought to be high spiritual, and there are colors which are thought to be more baser. Talking about the baser instincts of people, and that had a lasting impact, I feel, on the painting, since these are the colors which, so dark blue and ochre, these are the colors which are dominant, and mauve, which are dominant in his paintings. These are all on the level 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 and 5 other went missing somehow on the slide. So even though he left after a period of time, it had an impact on his thinking about color scheme and choice of colors with aligning with the subject. He had begun participating in art exhibitions conducted by the Indian Society of Oriental Art right from the times he was still a student. Later on, his paintings found place and received acclamation in many other exhibitions held in Madras, Trivandrum, Bombay, and Calcutta. His artwork, titled Rash Leela, received a gold medal in the exhibition held at Academy of Fine Arts in 1935. I haven't seen this painting, but it's written.
It's not the one that you showed a little while ago.
I don't think that is the one. I'm not sure.
Oh,
but this also looks like a Rash Leela, but I don't know whether it is the same painting. Yeah. Many of his paintings found home in private and office collections, including those of Shuniti Chatterjee and All India Arts and Crafts Society. Among other commissions, he was one of the principal artists working under the leadership of Sudhanshu Shekhar Chaudhary in designing and creating the interior fresco of the Metro Goldwyn Mayer commissioned Art Deco Metro Cinema Hall, which opened with a lot of fanfare in 1934. Again, I would like to see what the interiors looked like. It has completely been destroyed now, but I looked for resources and archives and I could not find it. I don't know where to look for it. Sudhanshu Shekhar Chaudhary had received commission from the Government of India to execute mural paintings for India House in London. Chaudhary had received art education from the School of Oriental Art in Calcutta and then traveled extensively in Burma, Siam, Cambodia, and Malay states, on the basis of which this selection was made. The other two artists employed on this project were Brijmohan Nath Jija and Pranay Ranjan Roy, both of whom were trained from the Lucknow School of Art and had been students of Ashit Haldar. These paintings were decorative landscapes done in egg tempera with glittering gold background. A report carried by a leading Indian English daily reports it thus. The style is not strictly in accordance with Indian tradition, and the influence of international art is easily discernible. Gold and green are the predominant colors, while a very broad outline has been pursued throughout, an essential characteristic in mural paintings. So there are a lot of paintings themed on mythological characters. These are the single figures. The earlier ones were figures of, you know, celestial couples, if I may put it that way. And, among the faces, I see a very distinct continuity. It could be the same character repeated everywhere, but this painting really struck me, Joshoda. It resembles my Rangamashi so much. And in fact, at that time, she had a baby and she was living with her mother at that time. So it could have been, that it's modeled on her. So these are some of his paintings. I don't have the original paintings, but they have all come out as plates in the dailies. I'll talk about that. So his art was published regularly in magazines and journals like Probashi, which was first published in 1901, edited by Ramananda Chatterjee. Bharatbarsha, another one, and Modern Review played key role in defining public aesthetic taste. Probashi, for example, periodically brought out print plates of paintings along with regular entries on art and artists meant to enlighten awareness and literacy about techniques and conventions of high art and culture. Ardhendu Prasad's paintings were frequently featured in this periodical, and Nihar Ranjan Rai published a full write-up on him in Probashi discussing Ardhendu Prasad's art style. Here he emphasizes the artist's reticence and introverted nature, which he was afraid might come in the way of his career. Ray also mentions that most of his paintings have gone abroad, with only the published plates remaining. It's showing the pictures. I've left them fragmented because, they're large paintings and I didn't have a proper scanner at that time. So I had to take it. But, it's going with the theme that it's a fragmented, reception. So these are the other paintings, and you can see it seems as if it's the same woman in so many ways. So later, Ardhendu Prasad taught fine arts in Gokhale Memorial Girls' School and freelanced as well. He taught art privately at the residences of Lady Ranu, Srimati Hati Singh Tagore, and Navanita Devshen, all of whom were associated with Shantiniketan in a way or other. He was subsequently associated with the Arts and Handicrafts Division of the government. His works have found place in Vishwabharati's Kala Bhavan and Sri Chitralaya in Trivandrum. Many of his paintings were used to illustrate the book The Great Women of India, edited by Ramesh Chandra Mojumdar. He actually, these are the most of, my favorite are among these. This is describes a kind of bygone era of rustic life. And I have grown up seeing this picture. It used to hang on my bedroom wall. So I have very intimate connection with this picture. And it is, I think it's very realistic in the way even the peacock's eyes are tied up. It's saying a history of the Bedes at that time. So these are some of the pictures which are reminiscent of the tribal life and culture of that time. These are also scenes from village life. Of course, this is a rough draft. This is one of his famous paintings which has gone abroad, but it is still retained in the publication. And they have all come out in this journal called Probashi. This is another from the archive. So he actually develops his own distinct style later on in life. He also chose themes of rural life and nature which inspired him. This was an obvious and direct influence of Shantiniketan's location and philosophy. He also showed keen interest in conveying art through artifacts of daily or common use. His training in sculpting and craft came in handy when he was associated with the Arts and Crafts Department of the government in independent India later on. His personal taste in trinkets, gifts, and jewelry for members of his family also bore a reflection of this deep-seated connoisseurship. So these are from the jewelry that I have inherited now from my grandmother. It shows that he had very fine taste because he used to buy all of that stuff for his wife. So these paintings show his experiments by mixing art and dance. All through, you can spot bodies as though arrested in time freeze in the middle of dance drama. This fluidity, again coming from art and dance, interdisciplinary trainings in Shantiniketan, or also could have been triggered by his career in mural making. He received commissions to design emblems for the government agencies. So these are his other very imaginative abstract art. And this is a shora. It was a folk form there, and it's still very prevalent. People decorate their houses with these kind of terracotta discs painted. So these are the emblems that he was designing. This is of course again a rough draft of, and I can see written on it is Shamobai Shamati, Calcutta University Shamobai Shamati. So he was designing the emblem and logo for these various art institutes and other kind of government institutes. his own logos. I mean, if one wants to do these researches, I think this is a fascinating kind of a theme to work on. And from the Mukul Day archives, I've seen this whole host of seals, which seem very, today seem very alien to me. But they have a, distinct Chinese or Japanese kind of touches or confluence in the way they have been formulated and framed. This is an excerpt from an article Ardhendu Prasad wrote in which he is critical of a pedagogy which is fully dependent on the written word or literary sources. Art or fine arts and crafts, he felt, were other ways of exploring alternate pedagogy. This aligns with another key personality and his ideas about education, and that is Rethinking and his mixing of art and botany in a way. And Rethinking was actually, he received his training in agriculture from Chicago University. And this could be a direct influence, and he also recommends him. He has the archives also contain a recommendation from Rethinking. It shows that they were very close, and his ideas could have kind of influenced.
This is Ravindranath's son, and
yeah.
actually he trained at the University of Illinois, I think, in Urbana-Champaign in agriculture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is Rethinking paintings, and this is Ardhendu Prasad painting, and other paintings of similar nature, where flowers and those kind of paintings where it has linkages with botany, horticulture, and agriculture. So, in the way of ending it, in his works, we see a wide range of versatility from history, mythology, nature painting, rural life, and abstract design. All through these, we can read a script of wide circulation in the world of art. Through art materials, for example, colors and paints which were shipped from Germany, art styles which were a part of global dialogue, objects and market where his art traveled abroad. Even in his small body of works, which are extant today, of an artist driven to obscurity by history, one can identify a story of global circulation and connections between the global and the local, overseas, and indigenous. Critiques of this kind of mythic idyllic art as being too idealistic in the context of 1945 onwards, talk about this as not addressing pressing needs of the times ravaged by war and famine in a post-colonial state. When after the independence of India, these connections also went missing or became difficult to carry forward. The transition to trace here is, of course, the pursuit of art as a respectable career in these times, during these times, and the travails and tribulations that one had to go through to pursue that career. And art as a bearer of class, separate and contrary to indigenous folk and artisanal craft practices. Another question is that of the passing of old feudal system of curating art or patronage. Example, acquisition of art pieces by princely states, etc., and the coming of new kinds of patronage structures, notably in that of the post-colonial state. This provides an opportunity to examine also the government's role as patron of art and artists, and as custodian, directly or indirectly becoming the connoisseur or curator.
Okay. Thank you very much. When you say that some of his art went abroad, do you have a sense of,
So, it is written in the
but in which direction? Towards Europe or other parts of Asia? We don't know.
I have no idea about that.
Okay.
It's
And-
written in a book.
And can you speculate on why he slipped into obscurity? I mean, you just suggested that maybe in his art he did not depict the gigantic human tragedies of famine and partition and so on, which many of his contemporaries did. Could that be one reason, or is it that all artists in the immediate post-partition, post-independence period in Bengal, even the most talented ones were struggling, and that the older patronage structures had crumbled, but newer ones had not yet been established? Could that be one reason? I mean, he lived until 1965, right?
1964, actually.
64, okay.
Yes. I mean, he had a huge amount of financial difficulties and distress. He had a large family to keep. So he was doing odd commissions. He was taking up odd commissions, small commissions. Also, another thing, a very interesting thing is that, he is usually the leadership positions were taken up by people who were more acknowledged. And his name kind of becomes, something of a footnote or not even mentioned. So there is a complete erasure of his name at times, saying that, such and such and his team. Yeah, so that kind of history writing and archiving has done injustice, I feel, to people like him. And also, in the list of paintings that I came across, there were urban paintings on urban themes. For example, Ferriola. I see these mentioned, but Calcutta Ferriola and
Okay.
urban street scene, but I have not come across these till now. I would like to see those. But as I said, this is a fragment that I have received, and I
Okay.
do not have his entire Hoover at my disposal.
Okay.
So I don't exactly know whether he connected with this kind of, tragic circumstances which were going on, or his own personal kind of grappling with his situation, his own financial state were the propelling, points in his career.
I mean, he was from Faridpur, so, and you said from an affluent landed
Yes,
background, but
yes.
after partition that
Yes.
would not have helped in any way. Before I bring you in and to ask questions, I mean, let me give you a sense of, what the social world was like of art and artists at this time. I think Nilanjana has very nicely portrayed the environment of Kala Bhavan in its very early years. But then, of course, Ardhendu Prasad Banerjee is continuing to work and produce art through the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and so on. And I just wanted to read you a couple of passages from my mother's memoir. She's sort of just moved in 1944 to a new home on Rashbihari Avenue in South Calcutta, and she's writing, the sculptor Pradosh Dasgupta, later curator of the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi, lived nearby on Sardar Shankar Road with his wife Kamala, who was from Kerala in South India. He set up his studio on the ground floor of our building. The music composer and singer Sachin Dev Burman and his wife Meera would often be seen walking on Rashbihari Avenue. They lived on a narrow street off the avenue, almost opposite our building. This was just before Sachin Dev Burman moved to Bombay. Gopal Ghosh, 1913 to 1980, an innovative painter of landscapes, also lived in the neighborhood. In 1943, he, Pradosh Dasgupta, and a few others had founded the Calcutta Group, India's first collective of modernist artists. Gopal and Pradosh, young men at the time, became very attached to my father, whom they addressed as Charuda, older brother. They constantly dropped in at our flat. I remember father saying about Gopal Ghosh, a genius, but he drinks way too much. In fact, we have a very large collection of Gopal Ghosh landscapes, partly because he would come and say that I'm starving, and Charuda, you must buy one of my paintings, and which he did. And as a result, we have a fairly large collection. And then she also says that also close by on Bondel Road in the Lakes area lived Otul Bose, 1898 to 1977, an eminent portrait painter. He was of East Bengal origin, born in Mymensingh. We used to visit his house often. Around this time, I also met the famous painter Jamini Roy for the first time. And then she goes on, and nearby lived, you mentioned Shuniti Chatterjee. So on Hindustan Park was Shudharma, the residence of Shuniti Kumar Chatterjee, the eminent linguist. But interestingly, she says, my most striking first memories of life on Rashbihari Avenue are, however, not of poets, painters, and scholars. During the first half of 1944, Calcutta was flooded with destitute and dying people from villages across Bengal, the victims of the Bengal famine. And then she gives a gripping description of what she saw on Rashbihari Avenue in the form of the famine. One of the places where, you know, if Shuniti Chatterjee did indeed buy Ardhendu Banerjee's works of art, it might be worth checking at the Indira Gandhi Center for the Arts in Delhi, because Shuniti Chatterjee's corpus of papers and also some of his collection of art has been given to this, Indira Gandhi Center. And it's worth perhaps, I'll just read you another bit. This is my parents' sort of wedding. The guests, this is 1955, okay? The guests were an eclectic collection. There were politicians and administrators whom father knew through work. Then there were his friends from the world of culture. Of course, father's close friend, Khonibhushan Chakraborty, who had seen me grow up since early childhood, was present. He was then the Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court. The linguist Shuniti Kumar Chatterjee brought a copy of the Mahabharata as a gift. The writer couple, Narendra Deb and Radharani Devi, Navanita Devshen is their daughter, our neighbors on Rashbihari Avenue, brought copies of their own books as gifts. Another family friend and neighbor, the hard-drinking artist Gopal Ghosh, was hard at work decorating the area where the wedding rituals would take place in Alpona style. Otul Bose, the portrait specialist, arrived bearing a special gift, a painting by the celebrated artist Jamini Roy. In fact, it was a pre-pot painting of a landscape by Jamini Roy. Now, your presentation has helped solve a puzzle for me. When this time, when I was in India in December, January, I have a very old school friend, Kollan Sharkar. We were in school together for years. He's now a leading doctor, a medical doctor in Calcutta. He was visiting me, and I was basically, he had seen them before, but I was showing him all the paintings at home, especially the Gopal Ghosh landscapes. And then he said that his mother was a painter, and she exhibited in places like the Academy of Fine Arts. And he told me that his mother had two teachers. One was Gopal Ghosh, this hard-drinking landscape artist. Mm-hmm. The other, he said, was Ardhendu Prasad Banerjee. Now, and then he was absolutely thrilled when I sent the poster of today's talk to him. And he then sent me, scans of some of his mother's paintings, but also a painting which he said has pride of place in his home, even today. And he asked me to check with you that he has always been told that this is a painting by Ardhendu Babu, which had been gifted to his student, his mother, Shephali Sharkar. Now, I couldn't be absolutely sure. I was going to show you the painting. In fact, if I can connect my computer, I'll show the rest of the group what that painting is. But I know for certain now that it is indeed an Ardhendu Banerjee painting, because I told Kullan that, look, there is a seal in the bottom right-hand corner. And it is one of the Ardhendu Banerjee seals that you have just shown. And it's clearly identifiable then as, so at least there is one Ardhendu Banerjee original that is right there in Calcutta, which, you know, we can actually, you know, see. So I'll try to show you that particular image because it's a lovely painting. Will you have to disconnect
I'll have to
that?
disconnect it. So in that case, maybe we do this right at the end after we take questions and answers, and
Yes.
we'll do that as well.
Okay, we'll do it as a capstone of an hitherto unseen painting of Ardhendu outside of a private home. But let's take some questions. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes, Wafa.
Thank you for this fascinating talk. I don't know much about the topic, but when I was looking at the paintings depicting rural life, it made me wonder if there are any influences of the Gandhian imaginary of the village pastoral or the village as the model of wholesome living.
I think there's more influence to talk about from Rabindranath Tagore himself than of Gandhian ideology at that specific point. I think Rabindranath had his own way of thinking about village life, rural life, and tribal life. And those are the things that would have influenced purely because of the proximity he shared with Rabindranath Tagore.
In fact, as I was looking at some of these paintings of rural life, there are some similarities with Nandolal in a particular phase, and also, interestingly enough, Ramking Korbej, who was in some ways more of a sculptor, but you know, he also, you know, painted village life, and he was brilliant in depicting, you know, tribal life. I think the Gandhian influence was greater on Nandolal in another phase, which is when he did the famous Oripura posters. You know, there were about 200 posters depicting different aspects of rural life. 86 were by Nandolal himself. The remaining 100 or so were by Nandolal's students.
This is another problem of writing history. So,
Yeah.
you know, it is usually, I have tried to look for Ardhendu Prasad's name in these kind of,
That was he involved in that group activity or not,
yes,
but it's
yes.
hard
Even
to...
the Constitution.
Right.
The painting of the
Of the
Constitution.
Constitution,
My family, one of my cousin brothers, who's much elder to me,
Hmm.
he maintains that he was part of the group,
I see.
which did the, you know, the original Constitution paintings.
Yeah.
And some of the paintings of the Jataka tales, it is actually reminiscent of that format. You know? But then his name is not mentioned anywhere.
Yeah.
So it just says
it's
that
in fact the lead artist who, you know, is mentioned, and then there are people working with him.
there's a conflict between the atelier system, which was going, I mean, the craft atelier system, and then there's this, you know, the colonial system of an artist whose name should be inscribed or signed. And that is more individualistic. I mean, that conflict is noticeable, and then I think Ardhendu Prasad shrinks in that black hole in some ways. So.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing such fascinating archive.
Yeah, this is Sreyoshi.
Yeah.
She's at the Mahindra Humanities Center. Yeah, go ahead.
So you touched on the politics of color selection, and I was wondering if you think there is a kind of deliberate and almost strategic move away from the monochrome, and this might be something specific to the Bengal School of Art that he was following, or in essence carrying on, or particular to his own selection of subjects and the kind of artwork that he was doing in connection to the social events that were unfolding at that time. Because I'm thinking of the woodwork of that time, and it's very, very politically monochrome. It focuses on black and white images. So I was wondering about that in relation to the pictures that you showed.
In relation to the pictures, I can see a direct connection and influence between what Abanindranath was doing and his art, rather than him, being in any way involved in the contemporary movements at that time. So, Abanindranath's painting has had a much greater impact on him to carry forward than the contemporary art styles and style. In fact, he makes derogatory statements at times. This is like in private. He says, about this coming of something which was new at that time, commercial art. No, so the coming of commercial art. He used to say that is chore, chore artist or something like that. So so there is this deliberate retention of style and color scheme, etc., and the choice of theme and subject, which is thought to be pure and spiritual, as opposed to these other methods of painting which was coming into being, which were new and they were thought, print oriented, and also therefore thought of as geared towards money making and sale. So he was a very kind and generous person. So from the anecdotes that were shared, he used to go for these private tuitions and give tuitions to his students, and he used to give them the paints as well. He used to buy the paints for the for his students.
Yes,
Thank you,
Ashutosh.
Nilanjana. I'm Ashutosh with Weatherhead Institute on Global History. So this is not a question, rather a curiosity that you talked that most of his painting was appearing in Pravasi, right? I mean, why it was? I mean, Pravasi means migrant, right? The work which I was doing. So, is there any connection that his painting was also associated with some themes of migration? Rural life is there, of course, but any relation?
That's a very interesting question. I don't know. I mean, when the magazine was started, it was titled Probashi. I don't know why exactly I mean, this is before his time when the magazine came into being, and yeah, maybe Bongobashi or something of that sort would be more suitable. But why Probashi? If you have any insights, I'm not quite sure.
Well, Probashi was in some ways the Bengali counterpart of Modern Review. And both journals, I think, began in the first decade of the 20th century, and they tended to, in some ways, propagate an ideology of what I would call Swadeshi internationalism. They did not want to be inward-looking. They didn't want to give the impression that they were engaged in some kind of a cultural defense, but they were quite interested in engaging with the wider world, which is why, of course, there are plenty of articles, that reflect the artistic and cultural conversations going on between India and the rest of Asia, particularly Japan and China. But they were also interested in, engaging with Euro-America. So Modern Review and Probashi would have articles about students who came to study at Harvard, funded with scholarships of the National Education Council that was established. So I think it was this outward-looking sort of patriotism that was being reflected in the title Probashi. The other, I'm glad that Modern Review actually had plates of so many of Ardhendu Banerjee's paintings, because, otherwise they would be lost. The other Fortunately, the Widener Library has a complete series of modern review. So it's, you can easily do a full search. The other art journal, which is worth exploring, would be RuPaul. Because the Fine Arts Library has a complete set of RuPaul. And RuPaul used to do very, high quality reproductions.
Yeah.
So for example, even for my book, Asia After Europe, I wanted to, use Yokoyama Taikan's Rashlila and Hishida Shunso's Saraswati. And I wrote to Japan, the originals can't be found. And RuPaul had high quality reproductions from which I was able to, print in my book. The prints are not that great, but you can, on the electronic edition, you can see them much better. So RuPaul is another journal, it came out a little later. I mean, Modern Review and Probashi began in the first decade of the 20th century. RuPaul started in the early 20s, but Ardhendu Prasad is active precisely at that time. So it would be worth exploring. Okay, other questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. This was amazing, really. Oshadaron. And
Oshadaron.
Oshadaron, yeah.
Yes.
And I learned a lot. I'm Keith Kantu. I'm a lecturer in the Divinity School. And I was really interested in this exchange between Madras, Chennai, and West Bengal, or what was then the undivided Bengal. And I was curious, you alluded to an ideological difference when he was spending time at the headquarters of the Theosophical Society. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little more what that was, if there's any source or where I could
I'm very
look for.
sorry to disappoint you, but I have no clue. I wish somebody would know, but this is all that has been mentioned, and my mother didn't know further than this. She was the only source that I had, I mean, apart from my aunts, to knowing more about that. She was the youngest daughter, but she was the one who kind of, because she lost her father so early, she thought that, she should know more of his life. So she was the one who kind of moved me forward in taking up this study. Otherwise, I'm not an art historian. My work is in other fields, but I'm also very curious about what this ideological difference could be between the Shantiniketanese and the Theosophist Society, and their way of visualizing art and spiritualism.
I mean, clearly they were engaging with one another because Rabindranath himself visited, but clearly there was a point at which Ardhendu Babu left Adiyar in a huff of some sort.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Shall we wrap things up formally? We'll show the pictures.
Yeah.
Any other folks?
Let's have Sudarshana's last question, and maybe Hitesh wants to say something. And since I mentioned the portraits exhibition in my introductory remarks, I only have one copy, which I will send around if you want to see. Okay. Since Abanindranath has been mentioned so many times, you can see a fairly good reproductions. Yes, Sudarshana.
Thank you so much for this fascinating talk. You said you're not an art historian, but you are a historian. And I was wondering if you could sketch for us something of his worldview that we could gather from his paintings. So if you were to sketch a social history of, the times in which these paintings were produced, how would you go about that?
First of all, I'm not a historian too. I teach literature, English literature. So my, engaging with this debate is from the aesthetic side of it, of literary, movements in essay, which were similar throughout 19th century and early part of 20th century. The phase of nationalism in art and literature were very closely entwined together. His paintings at the time, that is post independence, I mean, his worldview was very different. He was very self-effacing. He never wanted to be in the limelight. This is his personal side coming to me from my mother and my aunts. So he did not want to take up the limelight or be. He moved away. He was a kind of an introvert, did not engage very well with other people. So he was very um, uh, he was connected to very influential people. He could have made something happen, but he did not take those opportunities and chances. So he was, as I was mentioned, he was kind and generous, and he had his own, a very different kind of uh, space of imagination and spiritualism, if one can say that, which kept him distinct and apart from the other kinds of movements that were happening and which were, uh, you know, uh, which were the markers of that time. Uh, so apart from that, I don't think I have much to say about him as a, socially uh, significant, making any kind of having social impact on the time, or having some kind of a ideological bearing which was along the time, and the war and the famine and all of those times, those dark times that I couldn't see in the paintings that I have seen, them reflecting in his work. So, in that sense, I do not have a very clear answer to what you were looking for, unfortunately.
Hitesh?
First of all, I just want to say, by the way, one of the most impressive collections of Bengal School painting that I've seen is in a private collection in New Delhi. Next time both of you are in New Delhi with me, I'll take you to the family. And there are Ominendranath's paintings that I've never seen before anywhere, etc. It's really worth seeing there, including things that are series, so that you see him painting the same subject over and over years. But I just wanted to ask, especially because you are a scholar of literature, so ideas and training. I mean, so when you have Bharat Mata there, for example, obviously Bankim Chandra Chatterjee is behind that, right? It's not possible to imagine that, the literary and thinking world of Bankim Chandra. I also noticed, I mean, some of the greatest minds of that century, Indian and non-Indian, are there. You have Okakura, you have Kumaraswamy. Right? So, what is the fulcrum of ideas, and with it, the fulcrum of training? Because, as you rightly observed, and we see, the company school is there, Mughal art is there, down to the red balustrades at the end of terraces, which is a great feature of Jahangiri and Shah Jahan period, art. You definitely have folk art in there. And then, of course, you have various forms of early modernism. So both the cultural ideas and the training, how did they work together? What was the fulcrum? What was fermenting there? And how much do we know about it? How well is it documented? Because it's Bengal at that time is one of the great centers of thinking and culture in the world. And we think of Bengal as West Bengal now, but of course it included all of Eastern India, parts of Orissa, Bihar, and that is a natural cultural unit too. It also corresponds to the limits of the Pala Empire at one time, right? So there's 1,000-year history minimally of a cultural unit there.
Yeah, this is a very fascinating and interesting question, and it actually connects it to my other work that I have of India being connected through roads and routes which are forgotten, in the present time. So there was, of course, the overland route of the Ambassador's route and Burma Road, and here the Grand Trunk Road connecting all the way to the Silk Road. And of course, the overseas connections too. And all of that had sedimented in a past which was pre-colonial, right? So at this time, the art and literary movements concentrated on themes which were pre-colonial in nature, with a kind of a format which was heavily colonial. For example, the academies that came up, both in science and art. This actually generated a sense of awareness of the past, of history, and of the subjects which were all over India and which had other kind of connections with other parts of the world. So they were local, as he was saying, they were local in nature, but they were also global in that sense. And they were this fashioning of the nation was actually based heavily on an idea that there were global transactions earlier. Why does the Ajanta caves become so important in in understanding what is our former self or former history? I mean, there is a transaction history of transaction, history of movement and mobility there to be traced, and it is not only Indian, but it is about being connected in with other parts of the world. I think this is and history of India should be seen in that sense. And movements around this time were actually talking about going back to that past which were connected in these terms, and not merely British and Western histories and what they have brought.
But interestingly, without skipping the so-called medieval period, because they're
No, they are clearly there.
unlike some
Yes,
trends today,
yes.
they are fully absorbing
Exactly.
also of the previous centuries of art from there, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I tend to use this concept, colorful cosmopolitanism, patriotism, but which is not in opposition to cosmopolitanism. And if you look at the Bengal School, beginning with, Abanindranath, and I think there's a break from the earlier company school, you see the cosmopolitanism going in both a spatial direction but it also has a temporal dimension. So in terms of thematic content, here is the Bengal School and Abanindranath particularly, who was completely familiar with Mughal and Persian painting. His greatest works of art, perhaps, was something like the passing of Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan sitting with Jahanara in the Agra fort with the Taj in the distance, or his, absolutely brilliant painting of Zebun-Nisa, Aurangzeb's daughter, which Aisha has reproduced in her latest book on Muslim enlightened thought. But it also went in a spatial direction. He's in the portraits that you're seeing, there's clear influence of European Impressionism. But then he moves away from that. I mean, he teaches Mughal and Persian painting to Yokoyama Taikan, who follows Okakura's trail to Calcutta. But he himself imbibes the Japanese wash technique. Bharat Mata, which is our quintessential image of the nation as mother, is not devoid of a Videshi touch. It's done entirely in the Japanese wash technique. So, one needs to, have that. And also, the greatest of the Chinese and Japanese artists of the first half of the 20th century were being engaged by all of these, Bengal School painters. So even when Tagore goes to Japan and China, he takes Nandalal Bose with him. In 1916, he took Mukul Dev with him, and they are interacting with Taikan and various others in Japan. The same with China. In China, they're engaging with Shi Baishi, who's the master of ink painting in China of that time. Shu Bei Hong comes and spends at least 6 months in Shantiniketan in 1940. And he paints portraits of Tagore and Gandhi, and he does landscapes of the Kanchenjunga from Darjeeling. He rides a horse to Kashmir and paints horses. And then eventually M.F. Hussain appears in Shu Beihang's studio and is so impressed by his horses that he starts his tradition of depicting sort of animals. So yes, I mean, so there's a lot to talk about in terms of the cosmopolitan engagements both across space and time. So